Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TNT Show. I'm John Drummond, and I'm your host for the next 60 minutes. Thanks to you, the TNT Show and Indie Live are growing and delivering more exciting shows. You can watch the TNT Show, for example, on indielive.net. It's streamed out to YouTube and also to Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Plus, on YouTube, you can check out the previous 127 shows. And if you're upset by media coverage of political events, where journalism is often junked in favour of stenography and or rehashed press releases, if you're looking for an alternative voice, well, you found it. We're here for you. Now, by the way, it's your chance to be here for us. Please support the crowdfunder. You'll see the details on the screen. And it really, really matters. Just look at these two characters who appear to be making fun of the First Minister during her speech this afternoon. Now, it was serious. I mean, a First Minister is resigning. Quite why it occasions hilarity of this nature. Perhaps they can come on the show and explain to us what they found so terribly amusing about the whole process. But then again, they most likely will not, because they're, as we know, running scared. We've invited them on the show on numerous occasions by means of this broadcast, and they have failed to respond. Maybe they think they're above you. Maybe they feel that your views don't count. Here's someone else, by the way, and another great day for British democracy, who's been sounding off. And he's been sounding off about you. He is the new Tory Deputy Chair, Lee Anderson, and this is what he says about you. First of all, he says, making England great again. And I mean England, he says. For far too long, we've wasted far too much of our time trying to keep the rest of the United Kingdom happy. But think of it this way. Name me one thing that Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland has done to make an Englishman proud. Precisely nothing. All we've had is one long moan. It's not fair. We want more. Well, I say enough is enough. Time for England to put England first. The sooner the rest of us, the UK, understands what's good for England is good for them, the better. Well, there you are, folks. That's the new Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party speaking. I don't think he rates you very highly at all, I'm afraid. So, if you want to hear more of a very alternative voice like this, please support the crowdfunder. Tonight, we're talking to a special guest. We'll be discussing a chain of freedom across Scotland with Judith Reid. And she's taking your questions live. There's still time to get your question considered. You can give us a call and use the facility there. As you know, the TNT stands for Nation Talks, so in many respects, this is your show. We're live and we're free, so no license, no problem. Now, to our guest tonight. The Nation Talks to Judith Reid. Thanks for joining us, Judith. How are you?
Hi there. How are you doing?
We're very well, thank you. So where are you calling from today?
I'm up in the Highlands, the capital of the Highlands, Inverness.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. What's the weather like in Inverness just now?
Do you know what? It was a glorious day today, actually. It's still a wee bit nippy, but still a glorious day. And for us, that's quite tropical for us up here. So
well, it's February.
We can take that.
So, tell us all about COFS.
Okay, where do I start? COFS is basically a gathering of Scots, old and new, hand in hand across the land, highlighting the suppression of Scotland by another country in our hope and desire to be an internationalist independent nation. And what all that means is actually we are looking for groups of people to come together and join up in a 66-mile towpath along two canals between Edinburgh and Glasgow. It's going to be a hard feat, but I think that we could actually do it. It's going to be a history-making event, and I think that we need to gather together and stop all the fractions that has happened over the past 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. And as long as you're an independent supporter, come along.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this is this was sort of taken off the back of the Supreme Court hearing, etc. And Westminster basically turning around, or the English Supreme Court coming around and saying, no, you can't.
All
and
right.
if there's anything worse than us Scots being told you can't, it's definitely going. That's enough for us to sort of sit up and take a wee bit of a note,
Are you suggesting that Scots are thrawn?
Oh, definitely. There's absolutely. I mean, I wear that badge with pride, so I don't see why not.
Maybe somebody should start an organisation that's simply called Thrawn.
Well, I mean, you didn't need much more description than that, do you?
I don't suppose you do. So the whole idea is to have people link hands. Is this an idea borrowed from Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia when they broke away from the Soviet Union, or rather, the Soviet Union collapsed and then they decided to leave?
Yes, that's pretty much where it all came from. Siobhan was the founder of the Chain of Freedom Scotland, and that's where she got the idea from. And I hadn't really met Siobhan previously, and I'd gone on to one of her Cri de Cri talks because one of my friends was on, and I had sort of commented on one of the threads there, and it says, look, if you're wanting a hand, sure, give us a shout, because up here there's a group of us up in the Highlands that have organised several marches, several gatherings up here, so we're all pretty well connected. And so the next thing I knew, she says, right, okay then, let's do this, and all of a sudden it sort of roller coasted from there, and all of a sudden Judith's the organizer. So it's been hard, but it's been exhilarating at the same time. Exhausting, absolutely, because we're eating and breathing it at the moment, just so as we can get people galvanized and people enthused again to actually doing something. I think that has a lot to do with the pandemic, and I think that when we didn't go out over that sort of 2-year period and we didn't gather per se, I think that people have become just that wee little bit, empathetic about it. It's all right, somebody else will do it. Well, on this occasion, we need everybody to do it. So I'm just saying we've got to find about 74,000 people to cover that 66 miles, if that's the route that we're definitely going to be taking.
And have you had a sympathetic response from the local authorities along the way?
Well, local authorities, etc. There's certain stages that we've got to go through before we get to local authorities. We've certainly put feelers out. So the first and foremost is we've got to go through the canals and the Scottish canals. And again, on their website, etc. It was hard to sort of go through that and speak to people. And we've got through to that. We've had to make up an event plan. It is a completely I have set up and helped set up different marches, etc. And this is a completely different ball game because it's on such a massive scale.
Yeah.
And not only that, you are beside water. And so therefore there's a whole different demographic on the health and safety, which is quite easy for me. That's a subject that I work alongside anyway. So it's a different demographic, and it's a different form filling, a different procedure that you've got to go through in different stages. So yes, so we are ploughing through that. The most important thing was for us to see if we were going to get enough responses and enough people to do this. And so far, we've had a great response. I think we've got something like 117, I think it is, yes, indie / groups that have come back to us and said, yes, we're interested. We'll certainly help and galvanise different people in our local areas, and we'll set up different groups. So in my head, it all works out absolutely perfectly. Putting that into paper and telling people is a completely different thing. But
I mean, you know what they say, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Yes, it does. And I think that if one person's enthusiastic about something and tells somebody else, word of mouth, sorry, that's my house phone. I think that if people talk about it, and it's hard to describe, and it's hard for people to stop for a minute and try and visualize how this is going to work. So every day there's probably the same question being asked 20 times, but that 20 people have got very valid reasons why they're asking it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's finding the patience between the core team to come back and answer everything that everybody's got queries on.
Yeah.
So yes, it's sometimes a long day. However, sometimes you just get that one comment from one person, and it makes your day worthwhile. And that might sound cheesy, but that is an absolute fact. You know, there was a lady came on because I put a post up when we'd first sort of trying to get the feel of how this would work. And I put a post up and said, I understand that whilst you've liked the page and come in and said, yes, you are going, but how many people will you be taking with you that may not be on social media? Maybe granny, granda wants to come along, auntie, uncle, nephews, nieces. So that one person might be actually taking along maybe 5, 10, 15 people. So we had to find it, and then we had to think outside the box again and send out different materials and forms for people to fill in to say, okay, you're saying that you're coming along, but how many people are you taking along with you? Because numbers for me are like, it's like gold dust.
Yeah.
Because I need to have that numbers to make up that one link, you know, to make sure that it works. So a lady came in and had said that she's coming, I think she said it was from Sweden, with like 23 people. And that to me was, yep, we're going to do this.
Swedish?
Yes. Yep. Aye. We've got people asking, because the most the most posted question is, when is the date? And so until we find the date and we get all the answers back from all the relevant parties, you know, as in the different, we've got to speak to the local authorities, we've got to speak to the canals, we've got to speak to Police Scotland, we've got to speak to all these different bodies within that. We're lucky in the sense that it's not going to be road orientated, as in for a march. So we're not particularly closing down any roads. However, I'm still in the process of doing the health and safety for people travelling, especially. Because if you can imagine, we've got 74,000 people going along the canals, and the canals are mostly in sections along little villages, etc. So all of a sudden, if for one link, for instance, I've sort of measured it out. I went down, I'm part of the Inverness group here. It's called Yes Inverness. So went down there and I managed to get about 4 or 5 people to stand together, so as I could measure how the length of people standing with their hands out, you see, and then I could manage to then work that out, how much it would be for per mile, etc. So we've worked out to maybe around about 1,000 and maybe 170, 1170 or somewhere around about that for 1 mile. So yes, it's all encompassing. That's what I can say.
Okay, we've had a question from Chris Fisher, who's asking how many folks are signed up already.
We've got over, I think it's we've got over about 9,000 at the moment. Okay, so that is only individuals. That's not inclusive of the people that they will bring with them.
Yeah,
we're at the stage just now where we have we reached out to all the Yes groups, all the independence groups, etc. And if any of the groups that haven't had an email or a message, please get in touch with us, contact the page, and we'll get back to you and send out relevant forms so as we can get that, because what we're looking for is one point of contact for that one group. So therefore we can then escalate their numbers, and we can pass out different messages to them and different forms to them, so as we can get that filled in, so as we can then sort of galvanise and sort of collate all the numbers for people going for that one group. Yeah. The idea being that if, for instance, we use, say for link 1, I use it as in we've drilled the 66 miles down into 11 sections, and the 11 sections will be with 6 links in that section. And therefore, there might be in one of them links, I might have to have 5 groups. So therefore, that 5 groups I will then be able to sort of allocate groups based on numbers
Okay.
into that one link.
Now, you said this was along canals. Which canals is it along?
Right, so we're going along the Union Canal and the Forth and Clyde Canal.
Okay. So in your case, it'll be the Disunion Canal.
Yes, yes. I'm hoping that, that nobody will take exception to it being called the Union Canal, but it is what it is, you know. So we've got to use it as it is.
You can rechristen it. You can call it the Freedom Canal.
Now that is a question we could put to that could be a question we could put to our members to see what they think.
So you've got
obviously we don't want them to act on it. We don't want anybody to act on it. But yes, it could be a question posed.
Yeah, but we're only spitballing here. But so essentially you've got 17,000 people signed up as individuals.
Yes.
Yeah. So the likelihood is that, well, I mean, how long have you been at this? When did it start?
It started about 5 weeks ago. So,
so you got 17,000 people in 5 weeks?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, what?
So, but we need a lot more, John. We need a lot more. So we need what we found was when we were contacting a lot of just on social media, all the groups that had already been sort of active, etc. We were contacting a lot of them, and a lot of them at the moment are sleeping, as in they're not particularly active because there's nobody's sort of called for the referendum, nobody's doing such and such, and you'll tend to find. Again, I was a wee bit ignorant in that sense because we are so busy up here. We're in Inverness, so therefore I just assumed that everybody else was the same, and that's not the case. And that's not because of I can't be bothered and I've got no interest in independence anymore. I think that they've not had anything to particularly look forward to, because when you see a march coming up, it's just a case of, oh, that's fine. And you've already got your own wee clique of people that you go with, you know. So this is slightly bigger in the sense that we're trying to get more people involved and pull them back into the yes groups that are there. We've got quite a lot of well, I'm from Falkirk, and I'm not sure which yes groups are going about and which group can we join. So we're now marrying that up for individuals on the hope as well that they remain active with that group, you know. So yes, it's been good, and some days we're pulling our hair out, but on most days we trudge along and we're sort of gathering sort of momentum. So yeah, it's very good. I'm really pleased with how it's going.
I think some people are saying they're really interested and they're looking forward to seeing more details. I assume that, I mean, Heather says, I registered. What a gracious way to celebrate our nation. Do you know Heather? Oh, you do?
I'm not sure. I know so many Heathers, so quite possible.
Heather Saxton. And people by and large are interested. So it'll be the old story, I suspect. You need to do whatever you can to make sure that people know how to contact you.
Yes, absolutely.
And you probably, what we can do is, while we're chatting like this, maybe Kevin, you can put up the contact details from time to time so that people can jot them down if they've got a pen and a pencil handy, or a pen and a piece of paper handy, so that they can come back later and if necessary get in touch. Because it seems to me that with that degree of effectiveness or success, 17,000 people in 5 weeks, I mean, that augurs well, it seems to me anyway. I mean, I'm trying to think of some other activity which would attract that number of people in such a short space of time. I can't think of it offhand. I'm sure it exists, you know. You have a website, do you?
We are working on a website. There has been a gentleman that's come kindly forward and says that they're happy to help us out with it. I am the least technical person, as you will have completely come to the conclusion today, John. So that would not be me that does that. I can come up with the ideas, and I know it's the same with we've got a fantastic couple of graphic designers, and when I sort of visualize something, I'm like, I know what I'm looking at, and I know what looks good, you know, and what can come off. And we've got several graphic designers, and one of them in our core team, and they've come up with some fantastic graphics, so you know what you're looking for. But I mean, me to do that, absolutely I can't, you know. I just physically.
So,
but everybody's skill, everybody's got different levels of skills, and everything just all marries together, and that's brilliant.
Well,
you know,
it takes time to get these things up to speed. But
yes,
you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter.
yes, on Facebook, on Twitter. I think they were doing TikTok, and they were doing what's the other one? Snapchat as well. Maybe I think they were doing about 4 or 5 different platforms, John. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've had loads and loads of comments, people saying, you know, it's a great idea. Well, it says here, if you want to register interest, there's a facility for registering interest. So that's good. It's on the public comments, folks.
Yes.
So you'll see it there. It's from Wilma Bowie.
Yes.
Saying, look, if you want to get in touch, this is the way to get in touch, and you can register. So you'll be joining 17,000 other souls
Yeah.
who have expressed an interest. And so remind us all again, how many people do you need?
We need around about 74. I sort of calculated about 74,000 people.
So you need 74. Let's say 75. Between us girls, we'll say 75.
Okay.
75,000, and you've already got getting close to 20,000.
Yeah.
Well, you're well on the way.
Well, if you remember the comment I said there before, but so these people that have already registered, they're coming back and telling us that they'll maybe take along 2, 3, 4, or 5 people with them. Exactly. So you know, we are on point. You know, at this stage.
Yeah, let's see if Kevin, thanks for putting up the details. They're awfully small on my screen, I'm afraid. I mean, it'd be impossible to read those details because they're at the bottom of your leaf or
that's right.
The image, and these need to be big, you know, because you know I would suggest we've got the ways of registering. So if you had a magic wand, right, and you could just tap your magic wand, when would you like to see this take place?
I would like to see it take place as soon as possible. However, we have got 2 dates. We did have 3 dates a couple of weeks ago, but we've whittled it down to 2 dates now. So we have got 2 dates in mind. But again, we can't go back with dates. It would be pertinent to me to put out dates, and any local authority comes back and says no, you can't do it on that date. So I've got to amalgamate, all the local authorities.
If you had a magic wand.
And
you could set the date.
If I could set the date,
what sort of time frame would you prefer?
Oh, time frame. Now you see, you're going to try and get this date out of me, John. Really, that's really what you're.
No. I wouldn't dream of doing such a thing.
I would like to see the date on a date that's very important to Scotland. That's what I can say.
Symbolic. Okay. Well, there's quite a few symbolic dates.
Yes, there is.
In Scottish history.
Yes.
So you won't be spoiled for choice, I don't think. You will be spoiled for choice.
I don't think so. I think it's time we need to celebrate as well. This is a celebration as well as a sort of silent, very much so handheld protest. I think that we've got to celebrate what we've got. I mean, because I'm from the Highlands, I don't know the local history of the canals, etc. And it's quite fascinating when you actually look into some parts. I went down to Edinburgh. My plan is to actually go and do the 66 miles over the next couple of weeks. In the next 2 months, definitely, and just so as I can then visualize things for myself, because there's nothing worse than me telling somebody to do something. I'm not one of these I'm a doer, so I would prefer to have local knowledge as well as my own visual and experience on that part of the canal. So therefore I can then put that more into words on the guidance than for people to make sure they've got a safe experience doing this. So my plan is to do that. But any local knowledge from anybody that's on the show or watching.
Brian Cunningham's been in touch to say, look, we've got a Saturday Salter static event at Bella Houston Park this Saturday, between 1 and 2. All welcome. So that would be an opportunity, you know. Robert Coyle is saying, I'm getting document does not exist. Maybe you want to have a look at that. Anyway, we've posted the details again on in the comments area. If people want to take a copy of that, which they can use. There you are. That's Brian's comment on the screen now.
What was Robert's one there, please, John?
It was he said, "Look, I'm getting document does not exist when he goes to register interest."
Okay.
It may be a glitch or whatever, and you know.
Okay. We had a few come in and said that yesterday, and we thought we had cleared it, but I'll see if we can get one of the team to go and look into it again for us. Thank you, Robert.
Maybe
we're on it.
Maybe the audience tonight they could take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because Chris Fisher is saying, look, it worked for me. I just signed up.
Yes. See? So again, we were getting mixed messages on that yesterday. Yeah. We're tending to find as well on some of these comments that are coming back on any of the posts that we're putting in that we're very, very grateful that there's a lot of people coming in and saying that happened to me first time round. If you go and do X, Y, and Z, so that sort of lessens the burden for the admins on the pages, etc. So thank you very much for everybody. Is anybody that's got any issues just to come in and comment how your experience was and how you managed to find resolve. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Chris Fisher is saying it. Maybe it just needs a refresh.
Refresh.
Or maybe you're getting multiple sign-ups at the same time.
That's more than possible. Yes.
You have a burden of riches.
Oh.
Now let's take a wee break.
Okay.
Tell us who's in these wonderful pictures behind you.
All right, so this is my granddaughter, Millie, this one here, and this is my granddaughter and grandson, Aaron, and that's my daughter with my granddaughter, Millie. So that's my crew. That's your crew. That's my crew. Yes.
That's your girl power.
I know it is indeed. Millie is now she's 13 going on 23, as you can imagine, but I mean she's been to many a march and many a meeting and many an event with me, so she comes along to that. So, and of course there's always my grandson, what do you want? Whenever he comes in, what do you want? And I'm like, it's independence. And he shouts, when do you want it? And I'm going like, no. So they're learning at a young age. So it's good. It's all good.
Well, it's all good. And very often that's how independence movements succeed. You know, we had a guest on last week, Professor Danny Dorling, and he's a supporter in the sense that he wants England to get better, and he thinks that that's only going to happen if Scotland, it might need Scotland to leave in order for England to improve. But you know, and there's a growing number of people who take that view. Oh, by the way, let me just add, on the screen just now, you'll see details of a special show that we have tomorrow, which is that we'll be talking with Leslie Riddoch and Gordon M. Kemp about Nicola Sturgeon's resignation and what's next for the whole indie movement. So you don't want to miss that. That'll be at 7:30. It's a special show because, as you probably know, if you're a regular audience member, either a watcher or a viewer or a listener, we generally only air on Wednesdays, like tonight, but we're having a special tomorrow. I know, which begs the obvious question, Judith. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised, very surprised, not at all surprised by today's announcement?
I think that everybody had an element of surprise, to be fair. I think that there had to be some kind of movement within the hierarchy, and it's sad. It's sad that it's happened. However, we need to be positive. I do believe, and it's always been my saying, that the independence movement is bigger than any party or politician. And I think that sometimes that politicians forget that quite easily. So I think that sometimes we have got to bring it back to the reality. Without the people vying us on, these politicians wouldn't have a job. And sometimes, again, we've got to remind them that they work for us as opposed to we work for them. So it was a surprise. I was working all day, so I was only getting snippets, and still was right up until about 6 o'clock tonight. So it was snippets I was seeing. I haven't actually listened to Nicola's full resignation speech, or when she was at the podium. Haven't heard it, haven't listened to it in full, so I'll reserve sort of comment until I actually hear what's been said.
You probably want to make some time, and you will have to make some time, because I think it was about 40 minutes. Now, that included questions, including these two gentlemen who were sniggering at the beginning of the show in that picture.
Okay.
And by the way, she said, I'll give, by the way, that's details of tomorrow's show.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't want to miss this, folks, because what you've got is, with the notable exception of yours truly, you've got two formidable speakers there. And if anyone can offer a consolidated and thoughtful, profound response and view on the Nicola Sturgeon's resignation, it's more than likely to be Leslie and Gordon. So take the chance to, and you'll be able to ask questions, by the way, as well. So there you are. If you've got, in fact, you can post a question now for tomorrow's show if that's what you want. Okay, thanks, Kevin. We'll put that up again later, perhaps. But I was just struck by the fact that Nicola had made it very clear that she would take a few questions from the press. I thought she was overly generous because she gave them all one question each. And then for some reason, she decided to cut the BBC some slack, and they got two questions. Their response to that generosity was to try and ask her a third question after she'd said the meeting was over. Now, for me, I understand being a journalist is being a journalist. You're paid to be inquisitive, and I understand that. But if someone has already given you a question and explained to you that you were going to get one, right? It seems to me to be pushing the envelope a wee bit too far, perhaps, to decide that you, of all the people in the room, are entitled to ask an additional question. Now, it may just be BBC arrogance or the fact that they're very poorly supervised. I don't know. But I would expect seasoned journalists to have a sense of integrity and professionalism so that when they hear, I've given you an extra question, they take advantage of that, but don't press it any further, because it made for a very disruptive end. And then it was followed by giggling. And I just think that's very unprofessional. Now, if the two gentlemen who I've just mentioned, right, feel aggrieved by any of the things I've just said, they can come on the show, please, and they can tell us why they were giggling when the First Minister was speaking. That would help, because the BBC's reputation is a sorry state just now. It's in a parlous condition. Right? They've got a head who is a lone arranger, who drove the committee, the culture committee, tonto, trying to, if you'll excuse the pun, trying to understand why he didn't think it was a problem arranging loans prior to being appointed to be the head of the BBC. That was a mystery to him. He didn't think there was the slightest problem with that. Everyone else, of course, thinks it's grossly corrupt, but that's people have their own moral compass when it comes to these things. So the BBC is not in a good place, and maybe it's the wrong time to be giggling and laughing. And if they feel that I've in any way misrepresented them and they weren't giggling and laughing at the First Minister, then fine, come on the show, explain to us, tell us, you got that wrong. Here's what you got wrong. This is what we were actually doing. We were actually laughing at somebody else. Or maybe we were laughing at each other. I don't know. Or other journalists. I mean, fine, come on, explain it, help us understand it. And maybe when people unite across the country, Judith, we'll start to get answers to some of these questions. And people might start to develop a little bit of confidence in the state broadcaster, or maybe I'm traduced them there, the national broadcaster, if they prefer. But it seems to me that respect has to be earned nowadays. It can't be demanded. And what you're doing is to say to people, here's your chance to participate,
Right.
to get involved, right? When was the last time the BBC participated or got involved in the national life?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't just sit in one big building and say, I know everything about what's going on here, and you'll get my version and no other. I mean, come on, join in like you're doing. You're opening yourself up. You're saying, I'm putting my reputation on the line here. I'm reaching out to people. You don't know if you're going to be successful or not. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to do what you're doing. And I would like to think there'll be other people who are watching and listening to this tonight who think, something, whether I understand what the chain of freedom is, I can see the impetus behind it. I can see the value of what you're doing, right? And there'll always be critics, by the way. So.
We know. We've not had, to be fair, we've not had many critics. We've had a few people come in, the usual suspects, and you know yourself, when you've been in this sort of game for such a long time, the names flash, red warnings to you. So we're aware of that. However, we try. There is absolutely. We've got to always remember that you've got to listen. I think before you can actually come to any conclusions, you've got to listen. You've got to give a response and hope that they can see what your aims and your goals are for this. And if they still can't see it, then well, it's just a case of, well, perhaps this is not just for you. So we've also got to remember as well, this is not just about independence, the independence movement. This is about the whole of Scotland. We're being denied our democratic rights for different things. So it's not just all about independence. And again, I've had many people contact me and saying, look, I'm not for independence. However, what Westminster did, coming back in and saying no, and how dare they come back and say that we can't hold a referendum, and we can't do that. That was a political choice. That was not anything else. And there's a lot of people come back and tell us it's good.
I hear what you're saying, Judith, but I mean, let me just put a point to you.
Mm-hmm.
The UK is, I think, what the lawyers call sui generis. It's a creature of its own kind. It's unique in that other countries, other states, I think is a better term, other states are organised in a very different manner. The state generally is born of a constitution. In other words, the people who make up the states say, this is what we stand for, and this is what we will not stand for. And they express that in a constitution which is signed off by the people, and the people are generally sovereign. That's not the way the UK works. The UK is actually, in an odd way, has the generally accepted view, let's put it that way, is that sovereignty in the UK is vested in Parliament, and that Parliament is Westminster. So what the Supreme Court was doing, to a large degree, was simply to reflect that. They said, you guys want to do this, but the piece of paper that set you up, and remember, power devolved is power retained, that legislation said that you weren't allowed to do this. So we've looked at that legislation, which gave birth to your Parliament, and on the strength of our reading of that legislation, you can't do that. So that's what they were expressing. It wasn't so much there was a bunch of people there who were evilly disposed, perhaps. It was just that they had a narrow brief, and based on that narrow brief, they came to a conclusion. It'd be difficult to see them coming to any other conclusion, by the way, if you believe in parliamentary sovereignty. However, the situation is this, that people in Scotland don't take that view. And there's always been a body of opinion in Scotland that believes that the people are sovereign, and that the people determine. They are effectively the king. The queen. They decide what should be and what should not be. And if you take that view, then anybody trying to remove that authority from you is acting, as far as you're concerned, undemocratically. So it's because we have these two systems in the same country. I mean, you may recall the Smith Commission set off as its number one objective was to make the Scottish Parliament permanent. Do you remember that?
Yes,
That
I
was
remember.
number one. That was an impossible objective. Anybody who had the smallest smattering of understanding of how constitutions work would have known that was impossible. You cannot have two sovereign entities in the same state.
Mhm.
It's a nonsense. But they persisted with it and eventually dropped it because they said, "Like, I can't do this." And under the present regime, it will be even more difficult to do that because they're just implacably opposed to change, which means that people have to think about what you're doing and see the value in it, it seems to me, because you either sit like a bump on a log and say, well, we can't do anything about it, or you do what you're doing and other activities like that, which says this is a view that the people have, and you can see it in real. There it is, right there in front of you. It just makes a lot of sense if you think about it that way. Stripping the politics away just for a second and just think about democracy. It makes sense in a democratic sense, because you're saying, if you believe the people are sovereign, here are some of the people exercising their sovereign right. And then you force, it seems to me, a decision about where that sovereignty should rest.
I think that there's an awful lot of opinion out there, and I think that if we had political will from those that have been voted in to parliaments, whether it's Westminster or indeed our Holyrood, I think that they could be given slightly more clarity, as opposed to sitting back on their laurels and not actually voice an opinion. There's an awful lot of rhetoric that comes out, and that then causes that many questions down the line for everybody else. I think that once the Supreme Court,
I hear what you're saying. What would you want these folks to do that they haven't done?
I would have wanted them to have a wee bit more backbone and saying, no, we're not sitting back in that. We're not having you come and dictating to us. And Westminster is autocratic, so therefore I would rather have put. I think that there's a lot of people out there that put their votes, not only just their hope and their drive and all that years of campaigning, into just being sitting back and saying, oh well, that's it, done. And I think that has been a catalyst into how this chain of freedom even came along.
Yeah.
So we've got to try and put fire back into the bellies, and we need to find that political will. And I think many thought at the time that there was not enough political will for us to actually take that step forward. And we're never going to achieve anything from Westminster when they want to only ever asset strip or take everything from Scotland. They're very good at taking, but they don't give back, and they only ever give back in a sense that they know that they're always going to gain from it. So it's a bit like the free ports. They're never go, well, we've done all this, we've got this into two parts of Scotland. Here we go. But however, who actually benefits from it? So the benefits can. The benefits aren't that great. They say that they'll bring more jobs to us, but really what we're needing now is, while Scotland, I keep on saying, while Scotland shivers and starves, Westminster are still handing out contracts to people that haven't even been registered on Companies House for longer than the ink got dry. So please, we've got to find that political will to do something.
Yeah, in fairness to folks who are not here to defend themselves, I would just say this. I mean, your point about corruption is absolutely spot on. There's no question about that. This is a corrupt administration at Westminster. And I mean, I'm not alone in saying this. I mean, anyone who's access to social media, of course, you won't see any of this on the mainstream media, but that's why we have programs like this, so that we can discuss these things. But if you look at any form of social media, you'll see that. Well, in fact, let me forget that. Let me just read to you what the opinion polls say. I mean, according to one I've got here, is that the Conservative Party is institutionally corrupt, says this poll, and it's owned by the Russian oligarchs and others based in Moscow. So, I mean, it's not as if it's you and I and the independence movement who are saying this. I mean, the reality is that there's a growing number of people who take the same view, and in fact probably take it more trenchantly than you've put it tonight. But the fact of the matter is, people are upset. They're looking for change. They're looking for action. It's sometimes difficult to achieve the sort of action that people would like when you're part of some institution and it's got its own rules and regulations. You have to be very careful about the way you handle these things. The other thing that's important too, and it's difficult for me to take this on board, but it's only through reading lots of history about independence movements that you realize that it's quite a long continuum very often. I mean, I know the independence movement feels that everything needs to happen tomorrow, or enough time has been spent talking and discussing and deliberating. But if you take a historical context to it, or aspect to it, then you're actually dealing quite a short time frame. I mean, the Scottish national movement has come an enormous distance in a fairly short space of time. If you put it against a historical background, I mean, I could mention Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia. Look how long it took them. And also, I mean, and even though everyone thinks that America became independent sort of overnight, you're talking decades, because you're dealing with institutional change, and that's very hard to do. Anyone who's been part of an institution knows how difficult it is to make things change. But I think what you're doing and your team. Oh, by the way, who is Siobhan? You mentioned Siobhan.
Siobhan was the founder of
well, let's give her a name check.
Yes. Sorry?
Give her,
yes,
let's give her a name check.
So she was the founder of Chain of Freedom Scotland, yes.
Okay.
And she does Creed as well.
What's her name?
Siobhan Blashek. And she actually does Creed as well on social media as well. So this was her idea, and we're all just sort of running with it at the moment and to see how it goes. But I mean, I think that I think the idea is fantastic. I think that the time is right for something different. I think that we all need something to look forward to, because let's be honest, we've not had much to look forward to this past kind year or so with different reasons, and how we're being plunged into poverty quite easily, whilst others sit back on their laurels. So yeah, I think that this is a brilliant thing. I will promote it as much as I can, and I can just say, if anybody on watching tonight, or anybody that have got a group and they need a member of the core team to come along and speak, please get in touch with us. We can come along whenever it's suitable to you, suitable to us. We can work out a time even for us just to come along and speak to you for 10 minutes. It's quite hard to read through the posts. Everybody's so busy. Everybody's got their own family lives. Everybody's got different things. They come home from work, get the kids ready, pack lunches, school, washing machines on, Hoover going. So it's hard, So sometimes you miss some of the posts that's going on there, and what sort of stage we're at. So we're more than happy to come along and just take a 10 minutes out. It's sometimes better to be able to ask questions and get that answer directly back to you than having to wait for an answer coming back through a post, etc. So yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with us, please do, and we'll do our utmost to come along to one of your meetings, etc. Even just for 10 minutes. We'll do it.
That's a terrific offer, because I know, as you say, everybody who does the sort of thing that you're doing has enormous demands on their time, enormous demands, and bless your cotton socks that the fact that you're prepared, despite all of those demands, to make some of your time available to help other people in this way, I think is fantastic. Just a quick point from Robert Coyle. He's saying, for those not familiar with canals, is guidance to be provided on locations where it can be accessed, or is it up to participants just to find out for themselves? I think you answered that question, but you might want to repeat what you said.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for the question. Very valid. Yes, we will. At each point, we are mapping. That's what we're basically doing just now. We're mapping out the whole length of the canal, and there will be entrance and exit points. Everybody will be getting a guidance in these groups. So this is why it's so important that everybody's placed into groups, simply because the guidance that we will put to the point of contact on that group will give you guidance as to what area and what link you're in. It will give you specific details on entrance and exit points. It will give you specific details on bus routes, etc., like that. So again, local knowledge. If you've got local knowledge and you're on one part of the canal, get in touch with us. Give us an idea where you know the local. I'm from Inverness, so I have got no idea where that all is, and that's why it's going to be important for me to go down there and see it for myself. But again, local knowledge is key for us. So if you've got local knowledge on any of the parts of the canals, please send in a wee message or an email. The email address is on the page. And therefore that will then give us guidelines for each section of the canal. It's a huge undertaken. It's a huge task, but we're all still at the stage just now. We're very enthusiastic. You might come back in 2 weeks' time and I'll say, oh God, my head is absolutely bursting at the moment. But you know, we are trying, very trying. So yes, we have got all these things. I've got lists. My living room just now has got a paper everywhere. I think my kitchen table, my office through the house, it's the same. So we've got maps all over the walls. So yes, we are aware that we have got to be able to give as much information as we can, but it's also very important for people to not sit back and wait for us to basically hand everything out to them. If they're knowledgeable on that, come and work with us, come and tell us, go and speak to your local group and say to them, I live on this part, it might be a good idea if we could do this, or can we feed this back to the core team and they can work on that. So this is a joint effort from everybody. So and the more information we've got, you know, knowledge is power, and that's absolutely the case for this project as well. So thank you, Robert. But if there's anything else that I haven't answered on there, please pop a wee message into the page, or even direct message myself, and I'll try and answer as best I can to you.
Yeah, Chris Fisher is offering the thought that there might at some stage be a digital map, you know, where people who've been signed up are assigned to a location.
Yeah.
So they go to their nearest point in the chain. So these are all helpful suggestions, and
we're on the case with that as well. Thank you, Chris. We've what we're doing is we will drill down all the links, and we will tell which group is going into each link. Eventually, we're going to put out a map, because there's quite a lot of people coming back and saying to us, I don't know which group is best for me. I would like to go to always. I think the most important one was, I want to go to the Falkirk Wheel. I think there was, I don't know how many people, was an influx of that, and I'm like, you can't all go to the Falkirk Wheel. I've got another 65 links to fill up. No, don't all go to that link. You know, so having 7,000 people at the Falkirk Wheel, first of all, the Falkirk Wheel is not going to be too impressed, and neither am I, because the links are not. So my famous wee saying is, don't be the missing link. Okay, so please understand, this has got to be not in militant fashion, but certainly organised, and we've got to make sure that everybody is safe and healthy, and everybody knows where they're going and how they're going to get there in a safe manner, and how they're going to leave in a safe manner. So it's everything points to, it's got to be organised. Okay.
I just want to say,
do I sound too dictatorial?
Not at all. You see, this is where you get this gender thing working. If a man had just said what you had said, he wouldn't have said what you just said. He wouldn't have apologized at the end. He would just have assumed that was his right to sound dogmatic.
Well, she said it, and that's it.
Women sound dogmatic. Oh, God. Oh. By the way, can I just say a big thank you to Wolfpet, who's just donated to Indie Live. Much appreciated. If you know of others who might be considered likewise, please encourage them to do so. Because remember, as I said earlier, the BBC in Scotland spends £300 million. I can guarantee you Indie Live spends not even the merest fraction of that. Remember, you're paying £300 million for these guys, right?
Shocking.
It's your choice. You can either support them with 300 million, or you can give a small fraction of that and hear from people like Judith tonight. Because I guarantee you, Judith will never get a call from either of these guys. I'm telling you right now. Why? Because she's on the wrong side of the argument. Right? She'll end up being on the right side of the argument, but they don't know that because their boss tells them that she's on the wrong side. Time to tell the boss where to go. Okay, it's been a very interesting discussion. We aim to be educational and informative here, as well as entertaining, and I think you've pretty much achieved that, Judith. Personally, I wish you, and I'm sure I speak for Kevin and others too, every success in what you're doing, because it seems to me so much of what works nowadays, particularly when we've got social media and people are sort of detached from each other. You know, it's just the nature of life. You can become separated from everyone else. You know, just leaving aside what you're doing. I mean, the social value, which you haven't really talked about, but it's there, it's real.
Absolutely.
The social value of people who maybe because of COVID or whatever other reason haven't had a chance to sit down with other folks and have a chat and have a blather. You're offering them that chance as well.
Absolutely. We up in Inverness, we do a well-being walk every last Saturday of the month, and it was it was along the lines of being connected but not connecting. So, and I think that sums it up in one small phrase. We can be connected through social media, etc., but we're not actually connecting physically. And I think that is something, again, that was brought on by the pandemic and etc., going through winter of them horrible dark months, and I think that this is another way for everybody to get out and say, hi, we're still here. You know, we are still here. And I think that this has got to be shown across the world that Scotland is still here. There's still countries that doesn't believe Scotland is a country. They just sort of club us together with England, and that's because of the UK. But I think that we need to be connecting with each other, and I think that this is a great way to do it.
It's a great way. It's an additional bonus and benefit to the whole process. Well, our hour is almost up, Judith. I should have warned you at the beginning. It flies past, you know. You answer a couple of questions, and before you know where you are, it's 8 o'clock. But there we are. A big thank you to you. If you can stick around after we've gone off air, that would be really helpful. But I just want to say a big thank you to Judith. I hope you agree with me that the show's been really great tonight. We learned a lot about the whole process and how the interlinkage between an activity that demonstrates and it's sort of grassroots, it's non-party political. It's just for all the folks out there who feel that independence is probably, or a constitutional change is probably a good idea. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the TNT show. As always, we have a formidable list of guests lined up for future shows. Look out for Professor Leslie Stark of Edinburgh University next week. And also tomorrow we have that special TNT show with Leslie Ruddock and Gordon M. Kemp. We'll be talking obviously about Nicola Sturgeon's resignation, but also where the whole independence movement is going from here. Big subject. And from Leslie and Gordon, you'll get some real insights, not to be missed, folks. And as always, look out for my column in the Sunday National this weekend. You'll find it in the 7 Days supplement. I'll be looking very closely at the BBC and its ethics. And now you may think that's an oxymoron, but the fact of the matter is we're going to take a close look at it. And we want to see whether it serves the nation's interests. So there we are. And by the way, James Cook and your fellow correspondent who were at the press conference today, the invitation to appear on this show is still on the table. It's been there for months. You may like to challenge Emma Maitlis's view that a Tory decides all the BBC output, including yours. As a self-respecting journalist, I'm sure you'd like to set the record straight. So stop cowering in Pacific Tea. You look weak. Come out. Face your audience. There you are. So to all of you, thanks for joining us. Stay safe. Look after each other. Take care. See you tomorrow night. Good night all. Or remember the crowdfunder.